Welcome into Journey to the Earth. I'm your host, Kimberly Montgomery, and I am so excited that you are here for the premiere of our new series, Raw Truth, with Max Lowen. Max, how are you today?
I am well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this every month. I think it's going to be really helpful for people.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I have to tell you, personally, I feel so privileged and honored to be able to do this with you and to help facilitate you getting your story out into the world. You're doing a beautiful job. This is just another step in the way. So thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So before we get started today, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping just so you guys know what to expect and how we're going to move forward. Excuse me, it's morning in California. I still have my morning voice on. We will be going live with Raw Truth the last Sunday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're really interested in this series, and it is going to be a series in that we are going to start from the beginning and walk through the information that we feel is pertinent for you and the rest of the world to know. So if you want to mark your calendar for the last Sunday of every month, 10 a.m. Pacific time, and whatever time that is for your time zone, you can make a note of it. In addition, because we live in a world of censorship, yes, even here in the US and on this particular platform, we're going to be careful with our words, and we're going to be substituting words that we feel will be a little less triggering for the algorithm. So just know if we're not using the words that you generally use when you're referring to a topic, a subject, or an action, we're doing that intentionally. And we feel fairly confident that you're going to understand the content of this discussion. So what we're going to do today, because this is the premiere of Raw Truth, we're going to go a little long and expand the discussion on Max's history and Max's view of the world based on her experiences growing up. So today we're going to talk about first Max's background, why she's extremely qualified to discuss this particular topic, how it shaped her worldview. And the interesting thing is, while some of us are going through a tough time coming to the understanding that what we thought was isn't, and that the world is much different than we were told or felt it was, Max has not ever had that filter of misinformation. She has always seen the world here on Earth clearly. And one thing she said to me a few months ago is that she did not have to go through that heartbreak of realizing the stories we've been told are not the truth. She kind of knew as a result of some very traumatic years in her life. After Max talks about her worldview, which I think is very important because we're talking with someone today who has had a behind the scenes look at the control structures, the governments, corporations, that the rest of us have not had. It's an important worldview, and it has shaped how she sees events on the planet now. Once we're done with the worldview, then we're going to hop into questions. And so if you have a question, a specific question for Max, kind of wait till the end because I'll be able to see it over in the chat better. I also have pulled questions from Max's Instagram account, which is Unbroken. If you're not following Max on Instagram, please take a second, go over to Instagram, search Unbroken, and follow Max. You can also find her at unbroken.global, which is her website. She has a lot of wonderful information there, and she also has a very, very reasonably priced membership where then you are privy to private interviews that she's done. I'm a member. There's also seminars over there that you can do a deep dive into different topics that are really important, because these are the topics that we have really been lied to all our lives. So the website again is unbroken.global. Lots of wonderful information there. I'm in the membership. I'll see you over there. And with that, Max, let's get started with your background, your childhood, how this experience unfolded for you, and take us all the way up through the most important question, which was how did you ultimately get out?
Okay. Okay, where to start? Well, I grew up in a political family. So I had relatives who were in pretty high government positions, ambassadorships and generals and things like that. I grew up in many different countries, speaking many different languages. And my Italian side of the family, on my mother's side, a relative of mine there uh, was a probably middle level person in the power structure there and was involved with in an underground facility in Rome. So hence I was taken there from birth to age 18 on and off. I was in Rome every summer and every winter holiday, so I was always taken at those times. Sometimes this relative would come to the countries I lived in and do rituals and things there. And then when I was 14 and my parents divorced, I moved to Rome full time. So unfortunately, I was accessed all the time in those latter 4 years. The facility is a place that is, they have these everywhere, all over the world, under the ground. They're sort of military, medical, experimental type facilities. In Italy, they're Jesuit run. The Jesuits are one of the most evil organizations on earth. And they are masters at MK Ultra and this kind of thing. So when I would be taken to the facility, I would be put through tortures, things like electric shock, having to watch animals and people be slowly and brutally, I can't say that word, so unalived, being put in cages, being starved, being put in extremes of temperatures. So like they would put me in a big industrial freezer, being waterboarded, and of course, another word I can't say, but let's just say violation repeatedly from various adults. So in addition to that, this facility had a lot of technology. Now, this would have been in the 70s, and there was technology I saw then that we still don't even see today. So these people have advanced tech that they don't tell the public about. I was put through things that they have shown in different TV shows. I most recently had watched Stranger Things. So these tanks where you go in and you float and you're blindfolded. I was put through, I had that same kind of headgear thing that the character 11 has on her head, attached to different machines. I was put through all kinds of experiments as well, trained in different abilities. And then psychological torture where I was made to do impossible choices, like this person is going to get killed or that person is going to get killed. You have to choose which, or else both get killed, and much worse levels of that. I was also then taken, they had an underground tunnel with a magnetic train that went from there to the subterranean levels of the Vatican. And that's well below the tombs or where people think they might know. It's well below that. And there I was taken to a room that had an altar. And I witnessed, unfortunately, many times, again, children and babies being brought in, being brutalized and terrified, and then ritually unalived with specific knives to cut them open. I witnessed their blood being collected in chalices, being drank. So there would be a lot of people in attendance, kind of in a circle around the altar. And these rituals would be done in homage to Lucifer, which is the deity that the Vatican actually worships. There would be people of VIP status, you could say, from mega corporations, from entertainment industry, from religious figures. So I will say the popes attend these ceremonies. High-ranking global leaders, government leaders. These are the kinds of people. It would be an honor to be invited to such a ritual. And then I was, I don't think I can say this word, but I was given out to many such people for days or weeks at a time as a toy to be used in whichever way they wanted. And so that was one part of my life. And then the other part of my life, my kind of front life, so the part of me, obviously with this kind of, high level torture and terror, the psyche fragments. It's a survival mechanism. So they call it dissociative identity disorder, but it's actually a very clever coping mechanism. It's not a disorder in my mind. But as a child, you can't hold that in your consciousness. So I would, split off a lot of the memories of what was going on. And I had like a front life where I went to private schools and I had, lived in nice homes. And I was, as a straight A student. This is also actually pretty common with trauma survivors. You become extra, good at all these things. It's another survival tactic. Some of the rituals, it's called SRA. I don't want to say the actual words. Involved taking me out to different parties. Some were in very beautiful mansions, so they would be kind of black tie balls, if you ever saw Eyes Wide Shut, that kind of thing, except what they didn't show in the movie is the children that were brought in as party favors. Sometimes they would be on grounds at these different beautiful mansions where there were woods, and they were hunting parties, so we would be dressed up in certain costumes or naked or something and sent to hide and then be hunted. There would always be a child or maybe more than one unalived at the end of this. And actually, these people, I have seen cooked babies brought out on platters. They do eat human flesh. They do drink human blood. And sometimes the rituals would also be outdoors. So there would be like a gang violation ritual with a bonfire where I was drugged so that I was fully conscious but couldn't move my body at all, even my mouth. I couldn't even scream. And by the time I was about 17, close to 18, there was one ritual that they did. They love to do Jesus rituals involving crosses of all kinds. I've been hung upside down on them, etc. But this one was outdoors, and I was supposed to carry a big wooden cross kind of on my shoulder in Jesus fashion and circle around this. It was like an old stone house. I don't know where it was, but there were trees around, and it was a dirt road. And as I came around the bend, I saw my sister. She was hung from a tree by her ankle. Again, they like to hang us upside down. It's a form of torture. And I just broke in that moment. All those years and all that, I can't say that word either probably, but the torment, something in me snapped. And I became enraged. Just the anger just came out. And I had been trained in different abilities, like I said earlier, one of which was working with elements. So if anyone's ever seen the children's show, The Last Airbender, that is true. All the shows tell you the truth. People, I think we actually naturally have those abilities. But I raised wind, and it became like a tornado and lifted the perpetrators off the ground, probably a couple of feet. And then I saw what I was doing and I stopped, and they kind of fell back to the ground. But I basically, it's like some other part of me woke up, a different, almost like a different voice came out of me, and I said, that's it, I'm done, no more. You will not touch me ever again. And, you know, as a child, I didn't have the power to stop that, what they did to me. But as adults, we do have that power to stop consenting. And so that's what I did. I said no. And the combination of that and the fact that it's not just me, but other survivors, they train us in certain abilities that they want to use and control for evil. However, you know, once you have those abilities, we can use them against them as well, right? And so as adults, we always have the ability to consent and comply. We can be manipulated and mind controlled into consenting to things, and that's just for everyone globally. That's actually why they're able to do what they're doing. But in this case, I just revoked consent, and then I was able to leave Italy. And once I got to the U.S., I changed my name, and I just, you know, started my life at that point. And I don't want to say that I wasn't harassed after that. I was particularly always energetically attacked, but then I learned how to fend those off as well. Sometimes, you know, and to a degree, we're all energetically attacked by the technology frequency fence that we have around us. And so there's that level, and then you could call it demonic attacks. They're kind of the same thing. So it's not to say that I didn't endure a lot of that, and because I did. However, that's how I broke free. And people have asked me also why they didn't unalive me, and they did. So I had experienced that many times. It's what you call a near-death experience, where I left my body, see my body laying there. And I would always in that moment be with Yeshua, who is, you know, when you leave the earth, you're still around. So he would be very much my comfort and my friend. And then I would go back into my body. I would decide to come back. I always had a choice. I would decide to come back in. So at some point, I think they realized that wasn't really going to work, because I could just come back. So I think they hoped that they would have destroyed me enough, and later harass me enough that I would stay small and I would stay quiet. They did insert a suicide program in me, which they have done with many, many survivors. So basically, if I ever spoke out, it would activate. And indeed it did when I was in therapy, when I was doing my healing process. It was very, very strong, the program. It would actually take me to a train station, and I would stand there and it would say, jump, jump. And I just had to resist it with all I had. I learned to discern what was a program in me and what was me, what thoughts were programmed and what thoughts were my own organically. And I think this applies to everyone in the world too. We should really kind of work on that. So I was able to overcome that. Every time when I first started doing interviews, when I first started teaching seminars, that backlash is something that has always happened. I would be panicking all night long. I would be, scared to death. it was very tormenting and very difficult to speak out. But the more I did it, the easier it became. So that's something that's real also that I had to overcome. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. My healing process was really, really brutal. It was really, really hard because I had to remember and I had to feel and deal with the things I put away in the boxes, which included some pregnancies as a teenager, where they wait till almost term and then took out the baby and killed it in front of me. That happened a few times. I didn't remember that until after I had had my own child. However, something interesting, which is how the body remembers, is when I went to give birth, everything went as it should, but despite pushing for 4 hours, my child would not come out. They didn't know why, so I had to have a cesarean. And then when I was in the hospital room with the baby and they took her to do some, they take them and clean them up or whatever, I freaked out and I started screaming that they were killing her. They were killing her. I didn't even know why I was saying that. And so what I recognized a few years later when that memory came back is that my body didn't want to let her out of fear that I would lose this one as well, which of course, thankfully did not happen. It's very complicated. Trauma is, it's dealt with by the psyche in many different ways. And the cult knows this. And so one of the reasons they do these extreme tortures, is actually to fragment our psyches so that they can then what happens with the shock is there's a blank altar. And then they program that altar to do very specific things. You can have an altar that's trained as a honeypot, which is a slave, to service adults. I have very good audiographic and photographic memory. People can be trained as super soldiers, as spies, and various other things. So what happens is there'll be a certain trigger and they will go into that altar, do the task, and then go back to the front altar and have absolutely no memory. So these lone wolves that, assassinate people, they're not lone wolves, they're MK Ultra'd into doing these tasks. But upon interrogation, they won't remember, so they'll just seem crazy. So there's a whole thing. This is a science. The Nazis did this during the Holocaust. After the war, they were imported into the United States, Project Paperclip. That's when the CIA started. It's a known fact the CIA engaged in MK Ultra. They call it, they say they used LSD and isolation, but they don't say the other things that I've described, which they use. So this is kind of, a little bit of a brief history. And I always like to end by saying that what they studied and did on us, myself and all my other survivor friends that I know, they have done to a degree on the entire global population. So when you talk about rituals, I'm going to say Luciferian because I don't want to say the other word in case it's banned. They have done on all of us in the form of a plandemic, in the form of blowing up some towers in New York, in the form of wars, in the form of all kinds of things. We're globally traumatized all the time. And it's for the same end because it makes people dissociated, easier to mind control, to manipulate, into then basically consenting and complying with the agenda that the people at the top have for us. And fear is a really, really big tool that's used on all of us. And so that's something that I had to struggle a lot to overcome, is that fear. But I've decided to speak out because this is currently still being done to children, millions, globally. and we need to all come together and end this.
Yeah. Your story is in lockstep about your experiences as a young girl growing up, is in lockstep with survivors around the globe. And it's interesting now at this time on the planet, it's almost as though the programming is wearing off because so many of you are coming out, sharing your story, sharing your experience, and yours just dovetails in with thousands of people around the planet in different countries around the world. One, so many of the people watching today are familiar with this underground belief system that kind of really permeates the entire globe and understand it to be true. Those who are new to this information might say, well, wait a minute. If she's a 7-year-old, how is she being taken away for a week in these mysterious underground chambers? Why didn't anybody notice? Why didn't they notice at school? Where were your parents? So can you walk us through how this happens, and it happens in a system, and that system is designed to allow it and to almost ignore it in a weird way. So can you address that topic, Max?
Yeah, so in my case, a lot of the times it was during school holidays. So in my case, that's a factor, although later it was when I was in school. I was in a Catholic all-girls school in high school in Rome. Someone did notice. I was identified as very depressed, and I was actually sent to an American psychologist in Rome. I remember this vividly. I was 14. And I went to see her, and I remember I felt so relieved that I could tell someone, the things that were happening that I was remembering at the time. And I went maybe twice, and then the third time I went, I remember the archway to her office and everything, and she opened the door a crack and said that she was sorry, but she couldn't see me anymore. And I was totally devastated. Well, either they had set it up to give me hope and then crush it, or it was organic, like the school person, the nun noticed and sent me there, and then they found out and stopped it, because they weren't going to let me get help, of course. But in terms of your broader question, a lot of these activities are done at night. So a lot of myself and a lot of survivors, we have a lot of sleeping issues because these rituals and things are done at night. So that's one factor. They're done when the child isn't in school. The other factor is, children miss school. There's always excuses, and people just don't see what's in front of their faces. And then another factor is if you understand the overall structure. So I always say there's a global Luciferian psychopathic pedophile cult that runs the world. And so these people, they've infiltrated every institution and structure on our planet, okay? The medical, the educational, the media, the political, the military, the intelligence, everything, the religions, everything. They will have their people in certain high positions in all these structures, including the educational system. So many survivors have innocently gone to, for example, the police. They filed some claims, and then it gets heard. But once it gets to a certain level, there's always the key person that snuffs it out. Like, nope, it's not going to go any further. So that would be the same in a school system. If there was some concern and it would get to a certain point and it wouldn't be addressed, because there's always going to be cult people. So there's the global, but then they're in all layers. So they're at the local level as well. Okay. So these people a town could be very cult controlled. The head of this part, the dentist, the pediatrician, they are going to insert their people in all levels. So they're very clever. They've organized it very, very well. And so often, there's different aware Luciferian cult members in literally in every local community. So I hope that sort of answers the question.
And I think in addition that a lot of people don't understand, and why would someone understand this? We have been told a completely different story about the origins of humanity and how the planet is run. But a lot of people don't realize that this is a generational situation. Yes. In other words, your parents were complicit and they were involved, and their parents were complicit and involved. And what happens is that it's almost as if the day face and the night face on the person are completely different. Like when you're in your day face, you do the daily things, and you don't even address the fact that there's this wild stuff, very damaging wild stuff going on. And it's a weird thing that the human brain can do to partition off this behavior to make both sides work in society.
Yes. You literally don't remember. It's gone. I remember going to doctor's offices when I was like in my 20s or 30s, and they asked like, how many pregnancies have you had? And I would put 0. I believed that till I remembered.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the fascination with this group. And it's a global group, and it's big. This is not onesie twosie across the country. It is a network around the planet. Let's talk about the fascination they have with children and how that relates to energy harvesting and how that harvesting works, because I think that might be a place where people get a disconnect to understand why the babies. Why the little ones? Why did we have all these kids missing on the milk cartons in the 60s? This is a network that has been in place and growing for decades. So let's talk about energy harvesting and who that serves and why that serves also to diminish the rest of us on the planet.
Yeah. Well, and this gets into, a little bit of, it starts to get out of the mainstream mind-controlled narrative. So, just bear with me here. But if you think of the world structure as a pyramid, the people at the very top are not human. They're of the dark. And so they have had basically, you could call it a machine, a dark AI that has been creating a matrix, an overlay over our organic life on Earth. And so the movie The Matrix, actually, which is more of a documentary, shows this. So the dark has cut itself off from the creator, from the organic source of life, right? So they can't create anything. So they have to use us as their food source, as their battery. And so they harvest our energy in a variety of ways. So, for example, when you do rituals in churches, they're harvesting your energy. When you're in a stadium, because the structures geometrically are set up to funnel the energy in such a way. So when people get really excited in a sports game, that's harvesting energy. The energy that they basically consume, these non-human entities consume, is called loosh. And the best, like you would consider it a juicy steak with a lot of fat, is survival frequencies. So fear, hatred, despair, this kind of stuff. So if you think about it, they keep us as a human race in this bandwidth, in this frequency bandwidth. Poverty, scarcity, that's all engineered. We live on an abundant planet, but somebody decided to seize control of the land and the water and then charge us for this stuff. So all of this is deliberately created, but it keeps us basically in survival. So survival frequency is where they exist and where they can if they keep us, that's their richest food source, right? Now, why children? Because children, anyone who's ever had a child or been around children, you see a toddler, you see a baby, what do? Oh, your heart opens. They're so innocent, so pure, so beautiful. They're really organically what a human is until the world, traumatizes us later. But they're still so connected to the creator. They've just come in. Their energy is extra pure, extra special. So they steal that energy primarily. And then with the drinking of the blood, you can go research this. It's now used and more openly in the medical field. And people take this and it rejuvenates them. So, the blood of children, it's like a physical food source, but then the etheric value of it is that purity and that innocence. And it's also because Luciferians everything that's organic and of the creator is inverted. So they actually go for the most innocent. And if, as a human being, I think everybody would agree, the thing that would feel the most, that you would never be able to do is harm a child, a baby of any life form. All in the animal kingdom, the mother animals will fight to the death to protect their young. It's just the way that it is. So they invert that and actually destroy the most innocent. This is who these people are. They are psychopathic. They enjoy it. I have seen this all throughout my childhood in all the situations I've been in. They derive pleasure, sadistic pleasure from all of the things that they do. Okay, this is strange to us because we have compassion, we have empathy. And so even if you watch a movie where someone's hurt, you cringe, we feel for each other, but they don't. Okay, they're not like us. They're not like us. And I think people need to understand that, because people will think, no one could do that. Oh, yes, they can. And they do it with glee and enjoyment. They're extremely sadistic.
And I think that at least my experience is they can be extremely charming.
Oh, yes. Well, look at all our global leaders of heads of state and otherwise. They all appear to be charming and well-dressed and articulate, and they're really, really, really good actors. So yes, and if you even look up psychopathy, if you go research it, just as a psychological phenomenon, one of the first things that you'll see if you read about a psychopath is that they're extremely charming.
Yeah, they have to be in order to get to their goal.
Yes, so they know how to mimic. So anytime a global leader says, oh, this event happened and we're so saddened, that's all acting. They know how to get us. So they actually weaponize our compassion.
Yeah. And to get confirmation of this, just go back and look at Bush Jr. right after 9/11. He's standing up there, deep in his heart. Well, that whole thing was orchestrated. He knew exactly what was coming. But watch that performance. It's impressive.
Impressive. Well, yeah, his father orchestrated that event.
Yeah.
His father used to be head of the CIA. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they all knew. Not only did he know it was coming, these people are eager to do these things. And to clarify, when people say it's a false flag or a psyop, that doesn't mean it wasn't real in terms of killing people. They don't care about that. So it's a psyop and false flag in the sense that it was deliberately orchestrated to create an emotional reaction in humanity. And then because of that emotional reaction, to advance a solution, which was their agenda in the first place. That's the Hegelian dialectic, right? But so yes, people die in these things, absolutely. And to them, that's just collateral damage in pursuit of their agenda. In fact, they kind of enjoy killing.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the fun for them. they get to harvest all that energy. So you have gone through this horrific experience. You stood in your power and got out, and I presume got your sister out as well. I don't know the details on that. You did your healing work, which that could be a lifetime right there, Max. I don't know how you're being so brave right now. You became a therapist yourself to help others who have gone that, and that is the bulk of Max's work now, is working with others who have gone through similar trauma. Which, if you want to respect somebody, this is who you respect, not someone standing in front of a microphone lying to you. So you have this incredible experience. Now I would like to move into your worldview, how you see the world. And the reason I think this is so important to lay down as a foundation for our further discussions is that Max is someone who sees the power structure from the inside, sees the power structure from the motivations truly behind it. She doesn't see it as a savior program or look at this government's really going to help us. They're not. Governments around the world are all about diminishing humanity, which is why the world might feel so upside down to you. Why do things keep getting worse for us? That's intentional. So what I want to do now, Max, is kind of have you lay out, when you look at the world, when you look at something like the pandemic or the 9/11 or the 2008 housing crash, how do you see it? What do you see it? And what do you know about the structures, both political, or all three, political, religious, and corporate, and how this planet is truly run and the motivations behind it?
Well, that's a big question, but I'll try and answer it. So we have to understand that they have had plans that were created hundreds of years ago. And they have, once the world has had enough billions of people, it's too big in terms of humanity to go at with military force and might. That also doesn't work because people then rise up and push back, right? So the war that they've decided to execute and planned very deliberately, slowly over decades, is a war on the mind, right? So, for example, in the 40s, the Tavistock Institute was started, and its mission statement was to use future shock to herd people into the one world government, the New World Order. So they've done this very slowly. If you think of the 50s, and for example, just take one aspect like sexuality. There was courtship. Men had to prove to women that they had a job and that they were, decent, and people got together and they had families, and sexuality was part of love and had a spiritual component to it. And so they have deliberately over decades moved that Overton window. If you go look that up, it just means moving the reaction of humanity to something slowly over, so that today we have hookups. You can sleep with someone that you just met 5 minutes ago and don't even know their last name. And when you look at, for example, culture like, the rock and roll, or the feminist movement, or all of these things, we think these are organic things that humans have done, but I hate to tell you, these have been actually deliberately engineered. So it's social engineering to move the needle over, because their ultimate goal was to create a Luciferian society, which, if you look out there now, it's not crazy. You can see it. Look at Hollywood. Look at that Sam Smith guy in some award ceremony a year or two ago with the red horns and the devil costume, and the Luciferianism of music videos, and the culture that we have today, which is dog eat dog and me, and moral relativism. which the New Age has brought in, like, oh, there's no real good and evil, do whatever you want kind of thing. So this has been a deliberate drip, drip, drip to move us over. And that has been done in every way, economically, politically, etc., because the agenda was a one world government that was globally run by an unelected leadership. So then a lot of the engineering, for example, migration has been deliberately forced. So if you dilute people's nationality and culture and break that fabric down, you prep people for becoming just one global group, right? So that's another thing that they've done deliberately. Now they've weaponized people's compassion, saying, oh, poor migrants, and that is a real thing. It's not the people's faults that they go into countries and destabilize them and move them into this other country. But the overall goal is to destabilize every country to get us to accept. Again, it's the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem. They know the chaos that will ensue. And then from that chaos, they provide their solution, which would be, well, let us have martial law, let us take full control, digital ID, because now we can control who's who in your, location. And again, it's like the whole world is a stage, and they're creating new episodes on the show to herd us into. So then people think, well, we believe this or we think this, but no, it's actually, they're very clever behind the scenes, and they've manipulated that over to the point we are today. And so they want a world-born government, one world government, and they want a transhuman race because, see, we've been reset before in history, which is why if you look and you see there's pyramids and there's cities that they've discovered, that it's like, wait, how could they possibly have built these things? Because our history is a lie. Well, so they want to create they want to merge us with machine because we'll be easier to control. So they started that with things like a TV. And then, you and I remember when there were no computers or cell phones, and then we got those. And then it evolved into an iPhone. Now so the technology is, now we're used to interacting with technology all the time. I'm not saying it's all bad, but this is part of the agenda. Then the people wear the technology, like those watches or whatever. And then the next step, which is already being rolled out, is take the technology into your body, okay? And it's sold as, they always do something good, like, oh, well, it helps someone who doesn't have a leg, and they get something implanted in their brain, and then they can walk with an artificial. But the agenda is nefarious for all of us. So they want us to be completely chipped and merged with machine because, see, they need us. They need our energy and our life force, but they don't want us to get too uppity. And all of this is rolling out, and all of the economic assassination, they want us in 15-minute cities. They want us to have basically own nothing and be happy. So if you think of, my time, I owned records, and now I rent music. I don't own that anymore, right? And that's what they want to do with cars and with homes. And so it's all an agenda, and they've done it drip, 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 slowly, slowly, slowly. And government, so if that pyramid I described, the bottom layer right above humanity are governments and presidents, okay? So they're actually puppets. They're the face front of the power structure to us, but they don't actually make the decisions. They're told, they're given their orders, and they're told what to do, and they're actors, okay? So I've said before, we had Blue Donkey Productions starring Joe Biden, and now we have Red Elephant Productions starring Donald Trump. And the cult, it's the Masonic checkerboard floor. It's black and white. So they control both sides. So the narrative is that, oh, well, the left was the baddies, and they're the deep state, and now this government is vanquishing the deep state. But it's the false light. It's not actually true. They've appropriated, they've put, the word deep state has popped up in the common vernacular, which is good. It's because people are waking up. So they've now compartmentalized, oh, well, that's this side. but we're the anti-deep state. No, they're all players and actors following a script. They work for the same masters, their wings off the same bird. Okay. So the point isn't to be, for example, pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It's to unplug from that show altogether.
Yeah. I want to point out just a couple of actions that I noticed, along the way. The first one was during the pandemic, which I knew what it was about from the get-go. Remember when Fauci said, you don't need a mask. You're going to be fine. You don't need a mask. Well, saying we don't need a mask was the setup for saying you need a mask. In other words, they were introducing the concept of masks into the narrative and taking away from you, oh, don't worry. Oh, no, apparently now you do have to worry. That was a manipulation. That is how the tiptoe happens. It's done slowly, it's done cleverly, it's done intentionally. So when we look around, after 9/11, the Patriot Act came into being in about a week. That's thousands of pages. That was written long before 9/11. And if you use your discernment and common sense instead of listening to the fear narrative, it's easy to see the steps this group is doing. So next time, and it's the fear program, constant fear. And I think that we're getting fear fatigue. We're to the point now where it's like, I don't care, what new virus you've cooked up and unleashing it. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not social distancing. I'm not We're getting the fear fatigue, but I think the next step for us as a population on a planet that's in the middle of a takeover is we need to really step into our common sense and our discernment. And Max said something to me again a few months back when I was saying, I don't know who to trust. And she said, if you trust yourself, you don't have to worry if you trust anyone else. And that is it. Trust your heart, which is what they've tried to take away from us, our innate knowing and our innate understanding of what the truth is. Where I want to move next is what Catherine Austin Fitts calls the great poisoning. We are, as a collective, planet-wide, being systematically poisoned. It's in our food. It's in the Western medical system. That is a satanic ritual abuse system from top to bottom. It's in the air. It's in the water. One thing that Max and I have discussed behind the scenes is why they're just dumping so many chemicals on the U.S. Talk to us about the great poisoning and why there's so many more chemicals being pumped onto some of the Western countries as opposed to other countries.
Well, every country, again, remember the whole world is a stage. And every single global event that's ever happened, even throughout history, has been staged. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. And so different countries were different experiments. So if you take China, that was an experiment to see if mass mind control, if communism, if imposing rigid, strict controls on people. In China, if you say something that you're not supposed to say or whatever, you get your social credit score is affected. You can't send your kids to the school of your choice. You can't travel. In some cases, you can't even be housed, so that people end up on the street. Everyone had to conform. Everyone had to be the same. So that was one experiment, and it worked. So actually, what they want to do now is bring all of the West into that model. But different models were created to see kind of like they love to experiment on us. So, the pandemic was an experiment. There's been experiments before. So this country experiment was to see, okay, what works, what doesn't work. So in the US, the food is more poisoned. The air is there's more poisoning in the US. There's more stress. People work much more. In Europe, for example, everyone gets 6 weeks minimum vacation a year. In the US, you're lucky if you get 2. In the US, you pay hundreds and thousands of dollars to go to university. In most of Europe, it's free. Okay. In the US, you go bankrupt for medical costs. In other countries, they have, socialized medicine where you go and you get that for free. So interesting. How will it work if we stress people out to the extreme and poison them? Let's see what happens to people there, and then in other countries, but give them more resources, more affluence. In other countries, they have nothing. They're just bare bones. What happens there? So they've just orchestrated it to test out and see. So democracy, communism, socialism, totalitarianism, they're all experiments. They're all experiments to see. So Americans, I always used to say countries are like, you can compare them to individual characters. So the US to me was John Wayne. I used to see John Wayne movies when I was young, very independent, Americans still have their guns. They haven't let go of that. Very individualistic. So, let's see what we can do with a people like that if we poison the hell out of them. And, with the food, Americans have the biggest obesity problem, I believe, of any country on earth. So that's another, because, if your body is ill, Americans consume more pharmaceuticals than anyone else in the world, and yet they are sicker, which of course makes sense because pharmaceuticals make you sick. So it's just an experiment. They're all experiments to see so it's like ice cream flavors. So will this one work easier? Will that one work easier? It's really a game to these people at the very top.
Yeah. And if you're feeling desperate right now and hopeless, please don't. We are definitely going to end up today and every single day with a power up. And the power up is an action step that you can do. And the more you understand what's really going on, and hopefully if information is new to you, you're starting to see why things seem so upside down, why the governments continue to diminish us in every way, physically, financially, morally, spiritually. Once we understand that, we can take our power back. And we're going to address that at the end of the talk today. So make sure you stay for that, because Max is wonderful at showing us how incredibly powerful we are. What I'd like to do now is move into questions. So if you have questions for Max, put them over in the chat. I'm going to start with a few questions that I pulled off her Instagram account. And again, if you just popped in a few minutes ago, please go follow Max over at Unbroken on Instagram. And you also can stop by her website, unbroken.global. Become a member. I'm over there. It's a great place to learn a lot about how we change the tide on this and how we get our power back. So Max, the first question I want to launch into right now is, this is from Instagram. You addressed some of it today, but maybe touch on a few things you didn't cover earlier. Can you please explain more about the healing work you have done?
Yeah, so I started out with psychotherapy, and that was really helpful to me for a couple of reasons. One, as a trauma survivor, our reality is shattered and it's in pieces. So it was very helpful to get those pieces back, and it's like a big puzzle, and put it back together and get a coherent narrative of my life, because I had pieces missing, lost time. The other thing that I found really valuable about that process was that, ever since birth, that's when the abuse began. So I never had that bonding that babies are supposed to have with their parents, with their mothers. And so I had to learn basic trust, which is a stage you learn as an infant, in my therapy. I had to learn, it's like I had to build that foundation. I didn't know how to connect and how to trust. And so that consistency that, bless her heart, my therapist gave me, it gave me that, it restructured me. It's never too late, you know? And so I was able to, it's the relationship. It was a good, positive, safe relationship. I had never really experienced that. So that really, really helped me. When I was young, you know, I went to undergrad and did a master's and then later a doctorate in psychology. And I worked. I worked in the prison system. I worked in the inner city in DC with homeless, trauma survivors, addicts. I worked with, actually ran a program for men who batter. So I worked with perpetrators of violence. I worked with abused children, with teens. And so I did, and I worked actually in a psychiatric hospital as well. So I did a lot of work with trauma even before I had my memories. And that was actually part of my healing, because when I was in the facility, you know, what they do is they identify your weakness as a child, and mine was when others are hurt. That's what affected me the most. So they would do that a lot, and I would have no power to stop it. And I felt very guilty, like it was because of me. So there was something about me being able to help people that was very restorative for my soul. I became a mother. That's when my heart opened. That's when I learned how to love. There's no love greater than one has for one's child, you know, unless you're a psychopath. So caveat there. And so that really restored, and I was able to give my child the childhood that I did not have. And in a sense, that gave me that back. And also the spiritual connection. I mean, that's really what kept me alive all those years. And so to have that connection to your higher self, to Yeshua, to God, to whatever you want to call it, to that true essence of who we are is really, really important. And I did clear a lot of things. And then what came after that is my nervous system was shot, you know, and I had this constant anxiety in me. If you remember the Pac-Man game, you know, the little mouths, I felt like little mouths were always chewing on me on the inside. And, you know, it occurred to me one day I was looking out the window and I thought, wait, I'm safe. I'm in a nice house. Everything's okay, but I don't feel safe. So I started to really work on my nervous system and on my, I did this where I became an observer of my own thoughts. And that's how I found the programs, because the Jesuits say, give me a child for 7 years and I will give you the man, because those first 7 years is what forms the unconscious. So, and that's what actually drives most of our behavior and our choices. So it's really important, and it's work that I'm still doing, to find my subconscious programs. And you can do that by observing what you think, observing your reactions. So I learned that everything that triggered me was actually activating a wound in me. So I started to learn to not react and to instead to go inward and look at, okay, what just opened up? So a lot of constant self-awareness, self-observation, things like when negativity comes, also just saying no, you know, get out of my field. Being able to, learning to discern when the machine is pulsing, because it does, it pulses thoughts into us and emotional states. You know, they can take a crowd and cause a riot, and discerning like what's mine, what's not mine. So it's a constant process. And then I learned to live, to experience joy. So I love being outside. My preference is mountains and lakes and forests, but whatever, the ocean, anything, just to be in nature. I was telling a bunch of friends of mine that where I'm staying right now, a little hummingbird built a nest right outside this window. And I watched her lay eggs, and I watched the babies hatch, and I watched them grow, and I watched them recently fly away. And that's something that gives me such joy. It's the small things. It's a sunny day. It's really good food, and it's relationships. You know, I have some really amazing friends that are in my life. and my daughter, you know, which is the most precious thing in my life. So it's just, I learned to calm that inner anxiety and be in the present moment and live and enjoy these things. And then I'm witnessing from the things that I heard growing up, I see them playing out on the world stage, but I see it failing. So I'm also very overjoyed at the fact that the system is not, like the plan is not going as it was supposed to. And many, many people are waking up and remembering who they are. And we have all these natural abilities like telepathy and self-healing. And so activating those abilities and just, you know, envisioning a future where it's different, where we live like we were meant to and we were supposed to. So I'm not done healing. There's always things, you know, that I find and layers that I peel off. So, you know, the body is something we have to work on all the time. I exercise and I'm outside as much as possible. And I'm doing a parasite cleanse with my friend Angie, because we all have these things where we have to detox all the time. So that's another component. I've really begun to take care of my body. So I would say it's the mental, it's the emotional, it's the physical, and it's the spiritual. And to get ourselves in the best shape we can. Because look, like you said, we've been poisoned severely in every way, shape, or form. But you know what? We're still here. So, it's not working out too well.
Not for them. Not for them. There's a question from Daniela that addresses something I'd like to look at in a little broader way. It says, Kimberly, could you and Max please talk about digital ID that they're pushing on us? And I want to kind of dovetail this into what is being revealed as the nanobots that were in the the last solution for the problem they created, but they're also spraying it in the air. So there is, you know, as soon as we get uppity about, well, I didn't take the, you know, well, it's in everything. And we have bodies that have unfortunately been polluted with things that probably are not for our best interest, It's not probably. However, my understanding is that we are powerful beyond measure and we can overcome that. Can you talk to that and talk about your experience with the true power of the human, which is extraordinary?
Yeah. Well, one of the things they're most scared of is that we'll remember who we are. And like I said, they keep us in a frequency bandwidth, which is survival. I like David Hawkins' map of consciousness. You can Google. It's just a chart and has different colors and different emotions. And they want to keep us here because once we get to a higher level of consciousness, there is no disease, there is no imbalance. And in fact, there is no global cult because they can't exist at that level. So it would almost be like a magical wipeout of everything. That this is a hell on earth reality that they have created, but they have created it through us because remember, they can't create anything. So they've manipulated us, mind controlled us, poisoned us to get us to do their dirty work. But when you reach a certain level of consciousness, and how do you reach that? You do your inner work, you heal your trauma, and you learn the truth about the reality. As hard as that is, you learn it. You listen to survivor testimonies, you'll find a lot of truth there. When you raise your consciousness, you're free from the matrix, you're free from their control, and literally we would live in a different reality. And about the part where we do their dirty work, I'm saying this on a practical level. So some human is flying the plane that's spraying us with the chemtrails. Doctors are receiving big bonuses to inject children with these toxic things, you know. Teachers are willing to teach the new curriculum, which is a total sexualization of children and grooming them to normalize, again, a pedophile Luciferian society. somebody is spraying the pesticides on the food supply. Somebody is going to another country to shoot people up or bomb it or drone it or whatever the case may be. We're doing that work. We're helping them create this hell on earth reality. And then they're harvesting not only our etheric energy, but our actual labor. They're sucking up a portion of what we earn for our labor, and then they're using all those resources to poison us some more, right? So the solution is, again, to stop consenting and stop complying and get a moral backbone and stop doing it. Stop helping these people. And one way that I'm doing it also is, like, I don't vote, because to vote is to consent to the system of government that is oppressing me. And I'm not going to do it. I don't consent to that. So I'm not going to, people tell me, oh, well, you have to choose the lesser of two evils. And I'm like, do you hear yourself? I don't have to choose any of that. And that's mind control, by the way. Binary choice, red pill, blue pill, left, right. No, you don't have to choose any of their options. You can withdraw. And I think that's the way forward, is to withdraw from the system and begin to do and create our own, grow our own healthy food, make our own different schooling systems, get natural medicine back. Like, we don't have to participate in this system, and we certainly shouldn't be helping it.
Catherine Austin Fitts talks about it as coming clean. And the process of coming clean is taking a look at your life. Are you investing in mutual funds that have BlackRock shares? Mm-hmm. Are you banking with the bank that financed the Epstein operation? Right. Are you supporting corporations that are destroying the planet? If we all came clean and walked away from those systems that are really using us to build the grid to enslave us. What if they threw a war and nobody came? Right? Everybody just sat home. It's like, well, I'm not going to go to that foreign country and kill people. I don't know. I'm not going to do that. What if we just, it's like the opposite of enslavement is not being angry at them. It's walking away. It's not being interested anymore in what they have to offer. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things, because once we get clean and we're no longer playing in that muddy, muddy mess, clarity about how to move forward in a healthy way just grows. So I want to touch on another question. People, and this is from Instagram, people refuse to see, to look, or even just acknowledge. The cognitive dissonance makes it so incredibly difficult. Yeah. And I think, that is something we've seen so clearly, particularly since the scamdemic. If you've ever called someone a conspiracy theorist, maybe getting clean is going back and apologizing. The cognitive dissonance, because we have been so mind controlled as a population, to see someone telling the truth and attack them for that truth. And I think it comes from two places. It comes from being mind controlled, and we are all mind controlled on this planet. And it also, in my mind, and maybe you can speak to this, Max, it comes from a place of powerlessness. Like, if I acknowledge that, and yet I feel I am powerless to change it, I can't live with that contradiction, that I know something is horribly wrong, but I'm too weak to address it. So how do we move from that cognitive dissonance and step into our power and know, like you have reached that conclusion, you have a choice. You have total power over your life. You're not allowed to do anything. You do what you choose.
Well, first, everything you feel today as an adult has a thread back to something in your childhood. So first, go and find where your powerlessness originated. Like, deal with your wounding, deal with your trauma of being powerless, okay? Because you're actually not. So you have to go clean out yourself. it's also just a humility. It's a willingness to accept. We've all been duped. No one wants to admit that, you know. So it's tough, but we've all. I mean, I've gone through some programming. You know, I fell for the feminist program and the New Age program for a while. And initially, I thought that I was a liberal. I thought that maybe those people were the good people until I quickly realized, wait, no, these are all the same people. So none of us can grow up in this world without having gone through different programming because it's set up that way. So there's no shame there. It's just like, okay, wow, I've been mind controlled. Let's just accept that as a de facto thing. Okay. We're all question everything. Okay. Everything. I hate to, this is going to trigger some people. I already know it because I've gotten a lot of hostile comments, but they take the best form of mind control is take something true and then twist it around and then give it back to you repackaged, right? So there is a creator, there is a source of everything. That's just provable if you look out into reality, right? So that would be like telling someone, oh, well, an iPhone just created itself by random particles coming together. No, someone made that, okay? So someone made everything. Okay. The person I know as Yeshua, he walked the earth. He was a person who had achieved that level of consciousness where he could heal himself, he could heal others, he could manifest, he could take one loaf of bread and make many. And he was a freedom fighter. He came here to fight barbarians. And he tried to teach us how to be free from this matrix. So what did the control structure do? They took him many hundred years after his death, inverted his, actually didn't include a lot of his true teachings in the Bible, which was written as a political book. It had a lot of truth in it, but it had some inversion and distortion. He was then made the god of this new religion, but of course, dead and tortured on a cross is what you worship. You see, there's all kinds of sneaky little manipulations, but then people, again, they're taught that this source is outside of yourself because that's how the cult wants it. They want you to obey the priest and the pope and the doctor and the teacher and the expert. The experts say, you know, it's this myth of authority. So that's an example, for example, of weaponizing something real, which is our connection to the divine, which is within us. We're animated by that spark of life, and make it something external that you have to obey and ask permission for. And there's all these rules that you have to follow. So we just have to wake up to examine every single idea that we have, because mind control, if the truth hits you, the absolute, what will happen is the person will fight right back and say, no, you're lying. It's like this, you know. So when you find yourself triggered and defending your position, go, ooh, might that be a place where I'm mind controlled? So we have to take personal responsibility for ourselves and just know, yes, you are mind controlled. Let's just see where you're mind controlled. When it pops up, listen to people. Don't believe everything you hear, but use your discernment. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to feel in your body and your gut whether something is true or not. Educate yourself, you know. So I've had people on Instagram say to me, oh, well, I saw what you said, prove it. And it's like, well, actually, your ignorance is what needs to be addressed, because this is out there. There are hundreds of us. There is a lot of information out there. What do you mean, prove it? And again, the irony is their worldview, they've never asked that to be proven. That's the given. And then any information outside of the mind-controlled worldview has to be proven. So it's just, we just have to understand what's gone on. And to a degree, it's not our fault. We've been manipulated, poisoned, lied to, you know, traumatized deliberately. But on the other hand, it is our responsibility to take ourselves out of this. And we absolutely can, because these creatures that run the world do it with us. We're their resource. So it's just time to grow up, take responsibility, and do what needs to be done, and just do it in pieces, do it slowly, but do it.
I think we're in the middle of a really valuable lesson right now, particularly in the United States, with what we're seeing in Minneapolis. And we're right now walking through another manufactured situation created specifically to stoke fear and division and anger and emotional responses. What's happening there, regardless of what side you fall on, and even you might want to be careful about saying this side's right or this side's right. The fact is that that situation has been brewing for a long time. And this was the whole reason to bring people in, to create this division, to create this hatred and anger between two different sides. This is what they do. And so if you have a strong opinion, right or wrong, on one side or another, you might want to check yourself, because that's the manipulation. That's the manipulation. Everyone involved in this is just reacting.
Yes.
Reacting instead of looking clearly, using common sense and discernment and deciding there might be something at play here other than just the obvious on the ground violence and struggle. So
can I say something about reacting, Kimberly? Because I think this might be helpful to people. So the golden rule is, when you find yourself reacting, don't make a choice, don't make an action, don't think a thought, don't do anything. Just stop and go, I'm triggered. I'm in reactive mode. I'm angry, I'm furious, I'm scared, whatever it is. Stop. Let the feeling be there. Let it off gas off you. Give yourself a little bit of time. Understand that if you're triggered, something in you got activated, a sense of powerlessness, a sense of help, whatever it is. Sit there with it and wait. So when I'm triggered, I don't even think a thought, because thoughts create reality. They go out into the field, and we're collective here. So don't think, oh, that bee, oh, that a-hole, don't even think the thought. Don't make a choice in that moment. If you're scared, don't act from that moment. Wait, let it subside, because when you're reacting, and the cult knows this, this part of the brain, the cortex and the prefrontal cortex, are the thinking, reasoning part of the brain. When you're in some kind of fear or anger, it actually shuts down and you go into your survival brain, because in a real situation of danger, thinking is too costly, it takes too long, so you have to fight or flight. So they keep you in your survival brain, in your fight or flight, so that you don't use your logic and your reason. So don't ever do anything from a reactive state. That's the hook. Don't bite it. Wait till it passes. Think about the situation. Take your time, because you'll make a much better choice. So sorry, Kimberly, I just think that might be helpful for people to know.
No, I think that was a beautiful, beautiful follow-up to that. Where I'd like to go now, and we're almost to the hour and a half point. Let's talk about this month's Power Up. And I know if you are new to this information, or you kind of knew about it, but you didn't know a lot about it, right now you might be feeling hopeless and overwhelmed. And it can be depressing to realize all the stories we've been told, all the music we held all these memories onto, all these incidents that we had a strong opinion on. There might be a different reality. The truth might be very different than what we have thought. It can feel hopeless, you can feel depressed, it can feel overwhelming, but we're not going to leave you there, because we have the power. It's within each and every one of you. And every month we're going to end with a power up. And that's a little tip, a little trick, a little suggestion, a little action item that you can then take out into the world and start stepping into that power so that we can move away from the system that is clearly no longer working for us and create something better. So, Max, what would you like to share as the power up for this month?
Hmm. Well, I think maybe what I just said, because they're throwing a lot of chaos out there right now. I think the machine, the whole system they're not really able to execute their agenda. So they're trying to hook us. They're trying to divide and conquer us. So just in the United States, like you just described, they're trying to get the two sides, they're trying to incite a civil war, which then can bring martial law and digital ID and all these things. So don't bite the hook is the power up for today, because that is in your control. If you feel reactive and you feel like the other side is wrong, just remember, oops, wait, that's biting the hook. Take a step back, calm down, regulate your nervous system, go take a walk, go out in nature, meditate, and don't react. I think that's the power up. Don't react, because they're throwing these things out there so you react. And if you react, you're helping their loop go around. So I would say the power up is don't react. I mean, you will have a reaction, but let that reaction sit there, let it dissolve without hooking into it and acting from it. If you imagine the reaction as a little cloud, wait till it dissipates. Don't bite the hook.
Yeah. And I think what Max said, and I want to reiterate it again so that everyone can start seeing how this works. And once you see how it works, you will see it so quickly next time. They can't pull the same nonsense on you. This conflict that has been manufactured, the goal is martial law and digital ID. That's the goal. And what they have done is they've whipped us up into a frenzy in order to create the environment to bring that new control grid in. This is no different than 9/11. Scare the bejesus out of everybody, stop the nation in its tracks, and implement the Patriot Act, which was written long before 9/11. So just keep in mind the goal of the whole Minneapolis blowup, and it might move to other cities, is martial law, another loss of your rights, and digital ID. That's the control grid. So when you see what they're doing, that they're foaming people up in order to get a broader outcome for them, the game's over. You can almost look at it and laugh. It's no longer fear-inducing. It is obvious that it's so manipulative. So just keep that in mind. Max, I want to thank you. Again, I just can't tell you how honored I feel being able to do this with you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful.
It has, Kimberly, and I'm also honored that you want to do this with me, because I think this might, our goal here is to help people, because together is what we need to come together. So we don't need to fight each other. We need to fight the only enemy we have, which is them.
Yeah. And one thing I've been saying to people around me is I see the conflict out in the world that's talked about on every social media platform. But in my life, everyone I run into is so nice.
Yeah.
And I'll bet if you look at your life, you'll realize that everyone you've talked to is so nice. We are nice people. We are good people. We love and we care about each other. And those interactions that you have in your community, that's who we are. So we can expand that and decide not to play with this group of people who only want to diminish us because we are the power. So we will be back next month, the last Sunday in every month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can schedule appointments with Max. She does, I have not had an appointment with her, but I'm sure her trauma work is exceptional. If you could just see based on what she shared today, you can schedule an appointment with her for trauma work. Her website is unbroken.global, unbroken.global. See, I just used a little mind control trick on you, because when you repeat something 3 times, people remember it. So look at how many times you've been mind controlled from your television, from the radio, from the news, from the social media. Start being aware of what they're doing to your mind and take your mind back. Max, thank you so much for joining me. Everyone, thank you so much for being willing to accept this information, take it in, learn from it, and let's do something different with this fabulous planet and create a future that we're excited to wake up to. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Max. And we will see you next month, last Sunday in the month. Make it a great month.